Welcome to yet another episode of the Youth Roundtable here on Civic Space TV, where we sit together with our fellow youth and discuss pertinent issues affecting us as youth, but the country in general. We are part of a wider country, we are part of a wider society, and therefore the issues of society affect us as well. Our dear viewers, today we are delving into the discussion around the dynamics of the upcoming 2026 elections. We all saw a couple of weeks ago that the roadmap is officially out. We have seen political activity, but we also have the time now in between the term to review what happened in the last election and whether we are ready to continue, whether the politics of the country is healthy for the youth, is healthy for the future. Thank you very much for joining us today. And with me today is once again another capable panel to break down some of these issues. And we hope you stick with us through to be able to interact with some of these issues and also to contribute on our social media. With me today, starting from my right, is Mr. Agaba Ivan Bongonzya.
Very botanical.
Yes, a very botanical name. From the renewed Uganda, political platform. You're most welcome.
Yes.
And say some greetings.
Thank you very much. Again, my name is Ivan Agaba Bongonzya. Renewed Uganda is what I subscribe to. It's a splinter political pressure group within the NRM. We disagree on a few things with the establishment, so we decided to form a platform under the leadership of General Henry Tumukunde, and we are there. I can say also looking up to the events as we await for the election in 2026.
Yes, you're most welcome. I must also say Comrade Ivan is a very vibrant young man as regards cooperative economics, that he's trying to inculcate that very important but lost culture among our generation. We can't go without recognizing that good work.
Sure. So how has been, how can we create a formidable alternative to conventional banking? Yes, how do we revive and reintegrate the cooperative economy back into not only just Uganda, but East Africa and Africa as a whole?
Yeah, and I think what I've learned from you is that cooperatives are not institutions, but it's a culture.
Yes, a culture that we grow.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Next to Comrade Ivan is Comrade Joshua Mujuni Katabarwa. He identifies as a concerned citizen, but by virtue of being here, is also a youth leader. You're most welcome. You can greet our...
Thank you so very much, Joshua Mujuni Katabarwa. Katabarwa is, I think, more botanical than Bongonzya. Yeah, and I'm glad being here. It's my first time. Like you say, I like addressing myself as a concerned youth.
Yes.
Because I get concerned about this nation. I get concerned about Africa.
Yeah.
And not just in politics, not just in economics, not just in family, but the wider spread of Uganda, the wider spread of humanity. Maybe like what Comrade Ivan was sharing, when you're talking about not just Uganda, you're actually talking about Uganda. Because when I talk about the ethics, let's say,
yes,
in the elections of Kenya, my primary objective is not Kenya.
Sure.
Is Uganda. If Kenya, you remember that if Zimbabwe did it?
Yes.
So if Kenya did it, why can't Uganda did it? If like that. So if we're talking about the youth, if we are talking about, okay, the elite youth right now, how does it relate to other groups around us?
Sure.
And at the end of the day, what is the common goal that we all achieve?
Sure.
So I get concerned about Uganda, I get concerned about East Africa, I get concerned about Africa, and I get concerned about humanity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Comrade Joshua. And what you just stated, of course, applies to the African principle of Ubuntuism. You know, one of us is all of us, and all
Yeah.
of us is one of us. And we will be delving around different issues based on some of those principles as we go along. Finally, on the far right, we have Comrade Isaac Mugambe. Yes, he's a general manager at MakBoda, but
Right.
also director at Yuft Metalworks. You're most welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me to be part of this program. As a youth leader, as an entrepreneur, as a project manager, I'm so glad to be part of this discussion. Sometimes, normally, we as young people, we normally take politics as something for granted, not understanding that it actually controls whatever that we do.
True.
It controls our social aspect, it controls our economics,
Yeah.
it controls everything. Looking at Uganda, I must say that it's the right time for us as young people to engage in such discussions. To talk about Yuft Metalworks, we do rehabilitation for youth ex-convicts through skilling and group orientations.
Okay.
For MakBoda, it's a project for Kampala imams that was established through Operation Wealth Creation with funding from the Microfinance Support Center.
Oh.
Glad to be part of the team. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. Who are some of these youth ex-convicts? Is it mostly like Ugandans or?
Yeah, we do Uganda. We are located in Kawempe.
Yes.
We all know the background of Kawempe. It breeds a lot of so many gangs, and there's a risk actually to every young people in Kawempe. There's that higher chances of them joining gangs.
Yes.
So as a platform, we normally introduce such young people who are at risk to be responsible citizens. Besides engaging into gangs and probably committing crimes, we encourage them to be responsible citizens such that they also add value to the country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing work you do there. And we are really, really glad to have someone practically, impacting on the panel together with the other comrades. And dear viewers, as always, me, Okot, Olaa, I'll be moderating and enabling the discussion. And today, before we go into the politics of Uganda, we have one of the major events, that we're witnessing, which is the BRICS phenomenon in South Africa. And of course, BRICS, for our dear viewers, stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. The organization was started in 2009 as a new economic bloc, and we see in 2010 the addition of South Africa, which I think represents, in our case, Africa. But I think for us, what matters is, in the last few years, we have seen more countries interested. There were even rumors at one point that Uganda, we have seen Saudi Arabia, more countries interested in joining this economic bloc. Of course, stemming from the blocks that we have had outside these are blocks that started after World War II. We have the UN, we have NATO, we had the Soviet, which collapsed. We have African Union, which is more geographical. But right now we are seeing the world changing, So my fellow comrades, I believe this matters for us. And I would like to hear your opinions on some of these issues. And I'll start with you, comrade.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Okot, once again. I have a way I would always want to look at these economic blocks. One, with current world problems caused by, I think, the supremacy of a certain bloc against the others. And then now you have the Supreme West fighting against itself. The division is coming up every now and then.
Sure.
by nature you would always want to get new friends if you're fighting your old friends. And I think when you look at BRICS as a new bloc, and you look at the members, the original members, that
Sure.
is, look at China, look at Russia, look at India. Now, my question dwells more on Brazil and South Africa.
Sure.
China and Russia currently are rising, okay, mostly China, rising to the supremacy over the original known supremes of the world. I think it would be very wise of them and very beneficial for them to get new friends, new trade partners. Yeah, and of course with Russia, I think mostly coming to Africa, coming to these other parts apart from the West, increases their territory. You know, Russia, for example, here in Uganda, it gives us amaris. I think they are the biggest suppliers here. So coming now to the summit, coming to Africa, is not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. It helps us open these doors. It helps us increase our friendship. But my major concern is always on the founders. For us as beneficiaries, it is okay. It is widening our scope. It is giving us all these other options. But I would always wish for us to sit and weigh the mizan. They say they have brought this, then you run there. At the end of the day, what do we gain in these summits? If the summit is coming to Africa, how much is Africa losing and how much is Africa gaining? That is always my biggest concern. What are we able to tap in these summits? BRICS coming to Africa, that is okay. It is coming to Africa at a time when Russia is also dwelling more this side. And it is coming to Africa at the time when the West that is fighting Russia is fighting Africa in another way, because we are now seemingly leaning on Russia's side. So when it has come, how can we tap into these options? Can we get trade? Can we get tourists come to Africa? Can we widen our scope? Or else at the end of the day, it's going to be the usual. Do this if you want us to give you this. Do this if you want to go here. Do this if you want. So if we are not limited to, if we are not limited to operating with a certain group, I don't have any problem with operating with anyone. Yeah.
And Comrade Joshua, I think one of the things, the concerns you raise is because of the past. We have trauma from, at the time the UN was founded, for example, we're not even a country. And Africa has no 1.4 billion people, no representative in the Security Council of the UN, no permanent representative. We see NATO largely to the detriment of Africa. We can, whether it was clear or not, we can see in the results that sub-Saharan Africa is still debt-ridden, running debt economies, and really poor. But now we have this block of Russia, India, China, moving this rhetoric that we are going to trade as equal partners. We're going to trade as equal partners. Do you think we can trust this bloc as, for example, compared to the West, which we have had for the last 70 years?
But trading as equal partners, okay, let's take an example of China. We have how many projects being run in Uganda, funded by China?
Many.
How much does, what are the returns that get back to the Ugandan economy?
I mean, infrastructure, for example, roads, express, Karuma.
Okay, the infrastructure is there. I have given you $100 billion US in China. You Uganda go and construct that. The road has been constructed. At the end of the day, how much is a Ugandan youth earning on that project? because it shouldn't just be the road. The road is going to be there. But if I am poor, what is the road going to help me? I mean, you have Entebbe High Express constructed, very magnificent,
Yes.
running. But if I do not have anything that I can trade between Entebbe and Uganda, and to use the road, I must pay. Now, what does that help me? And then at the end of the day, what debt am I paying back to China? So the thing of being economical development, yeah, the infrastructure is coming, that is okay. But as far as the trust is, I think Africa, we need to step up our negotiation capacity and know that if we are negotiating with, let's say, BRICS now, then we must stand our ground. Actually, my biggest question is, South Africa is part of BRICS.
Yes.
Does the whole of Africa gain? Does it negotiate on behalf of Africa? Or it is just what South Africa as a nation earns? So if we can only be able to negotiate well, it doesn't matter. Even if it is this UN, even if it is NATO, even if it's what, for as long as we can stand our ground and negotiate well. But if we trade ourselves, then we shall get what we've been getting. If we stand our ground and negotiate, then we shall gain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, comrade. I think that's really insightful. I think what it talks largely is that even when we are not in BRICS, we already trade largely with BRICS. China is, one of our, if not the biggest trading partner of Uganda as per now. So we already have dynamics. But just before I come to you, Comrade Isaac, I wanted to go through a few statistics that I got here. BRICS in global numbers, 42% of the world's population. That is largely because of India and China. But also Brazil is in the top 10, South Africa, Russia, these are big populations. 18% of global trade, which is really big as well, in between themselves. 26% of the world's territory. I believe Russia, and this one is a big contributor. And then 23% of the world's GDP. So, Comrade Isaac, we have seen, these are big numbers. And I think it's something, in trade, it's always a game of numbers. Do you think the coming of, the BRICS summit to South Africa, but also the general mood of Africa tilting towards Russia, India, China is a net benefit for the continent?
Looking at South Africa joining the upcoming economies, large economies, I say it all depends on the country's foreign policy. Joining such blocks depends on what interest you have.
Sure.
For us as Africans, I see South Africa joining BRICS as a more of an economic move. South Africa is not looking at gaining political power over the continent. I don't see so much South Africa engaging in the wars that are happening in the African continent.
True.
I see it as more of an economic move. South Africa joining such a platform, we see it as an underdog. For us as Africans, looking at the funds probably to fund our projects, I look at it as a great move for South Africa.
Sure.
But I worry about the African continent. Joining BRICS is not the first probably coalition that has been established. There's UN, and you referred probably even to the Security Council, where Africa has no permanent seat on it. There are so many other platforms that African countries are engaging in. But the question comes back to us. As the Africans, we are really striving very hard to see that we move up the game, to see that at least Africans can control their own economies, they can control their own countries. Engaging more in such platforms needs to be a very, very big calculated move. Because if you don't calculate it, again we are creating ourselves to be underdogs in such platforms. I'm looking at a shared win.
Mm.
If South Africa engages with Russia, how do we benefit?
Mm.
I see Africans benefiting less actually. Our most emphasis should be put probably on empowering the African Union, because this is our bloc, this is ours. If Africans join together as African Union, I believe that we will create a bloc that will be so much powerful, economy-wise and even political-wise. Looking at the politics in such countries that are engaging in BRICS, there are more of countries that do not benefit in democracy. Look at Russia, look at Brazil, and even look at even the nature of the countries that would like to join to join such platforms.
Yes.
I'm looking at
Saudi.
countries that would like to benefit in such groupings politically. China engaging in BRICS does not add probably that much value. China has been engaging with so many African nations, and there's much that will not be added on that. I completely believe that Africans should concentrate much on empowering the African Union, which is ours, for us to solve our continental problems. Engaging with such countries that come into Africa, they come in with their own benefits. My comrade he has talked about there's so many funds that we as Uganda are benefiting from China. But at the end of the day, who loses?
True.
You look at the loans that we get from such countries, and I'm worried that our country's resources actually are being taken to such countries. They are benefiting the so-called economies. And for us as Africans, we are not gaining much. If we are to concentrate on our economies, and if we are to say that let's do away with actually collaborating much with the Western powers, with the BRICS, and if we collaborate probably with our neighbors, I completely believe that we will benefit much as far as trade is concerned, as far as even building our economies. I'm referring to probably a comment in Niger. When you look at Niger, the only problem that is affecting is the Western powers, most especially France, has been benefiting a lot from that country.
Sure.
Benefiting from the resources, which would have benefited actually the Niger citizens. So I'm looking at a situation whereby Africa gets concerned about issues of Africans, not referring such issues to be solved by the Western powers, by the BRICS. I look at African Union as a bloc that has so much opportunities. If at all we can open boundaries actually in the African Union, I guess the market will be widened.
Yeah.
If at all we look at political formations, even in Africa, there's a lot that will be solved. The coups, the wars, the civil wars in our countries will be dealt with.
Yeah, but comrade, we have the African preferential, free trade area that was unleashed by Africa. We also have issues around. We saw last week Ruto, for example, saying that Africans will no longer. Actually, he has been touring Africa, removing the visa necessity for Africa, which are good moves.
Yeah.
But then the truth, another truth in economics, which we have seen, is that for us to grow, even as Africa, we need the world.
Yes.
China grew because they were manufacturing all of America's needs. So don't you think it's a bit, do you think it's the right idea that we should isolate from the rest of the world and just focus on ourselves? Or we need to focus on building, for example, the infrastructure here and then negotiate better, because you started with the point of negotiating.
I completely believe in that, because you see, these countries are using our own resources to actually benefit their citizens. If the resources are in our countries, I think we should have a big stake. If Uganda has oil, let Uganda benefit much than any other country that comes in to do any business in that oil. You see,
looking at the wave now in the different African countries, you see realization of the true nature of probably an Africanist. An Africanist who develops, who looks at the mentality that Africa can develop on its own. Why? Because those countries are actually using our own resources to benefit themselves. I was referring you to Niger.
Sure.
Niger has a lot of uranium.
Yes.
Who benefits in that uranium?
France.
It is France. So if Niger comes, if the citizens rise and say, you know what, let us citizens benefit in our uranium, then it will be a good move. You will see Niger developing. Take an example of Libya. Libya developed because they used their resources to benefit Libyans.
That's true.
Why can't other countries do the same? Referring to what you said about President Ruto, if all other countries actually can adopt to that,
Yes.
you see trade moving. You see even African countries moving. With our resources, our countries normally become slaves to the development banks which those blocks come with. We have African Development Bank. Can we at least as Africans see how to empower it? Because even the African Development Bank can at least for sometimes fund the projects that are moving on the African continent. If we use the resources very, very well, you see African continent moving, even developing more economical than the Western world. That is. Yes.
Thank you very much, Comrade Isaac. Comrade Ivan, there was a time Julius Nyerere was asked about free trade and versus protectionism, and he said, you know, free trade is for Africa is like putting a lightweight boxer with a heavyweight boxer in the same ring. Then you said this is totally fair. He was a idiomatic expresser, and I think that was from his teaching, teaching background. Do you think this is one of those cases where Africa once again is a lightweight boxer, competing with heavyweights, and the world is somehow saying this is a fair fight?
Sure.
But also your general reflections about, the African approach to BRICS and then the BRICS in South Africa.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. I think I'll begin with the question before my general reflections.
Sure.
To me, I think, and this is a case in most of the developing countries of the African continent. You see, the idea of opening up and liberalization was a very premature one. And even the hindsight with which it was implemented was so abhorrent that, you see, it would even be so evident to a young child that this was done the wrong way. Africa's economies then were still nursing wounds from the long stay of the colonial powers and even the wars that we had post-independence. So opening up the economy and ushering in multipartyism as one of the conditionalities to have these HIPIC, highly indebted poor countries excused of their debt was to me not the right thing to do. So I think Africa still should have opened up, but cautiously, keeping protectionism as a policy over very key sectors like finance. Uganda, you have a country where the finance sector is largely multinational dominated. Because we just opened up. South Africans came here, they bought out Uganda Commercial Bank. The few existing local banks that we had here, we had Nile Bank. Nile Bank was bought out by Barclays, now Absa. So, and you know the hemorrhage of the very many banks that we had here towards the end of the 1990s. So the opening up thing and the idiom and the figurative sort of banterweight and lightweight and heavyweight that Mwalimu used was a very clear description, and had Africans, you see, the challenge with Africa historically has been, you see, that what are our strategic interests? You see, America, which I consider to be the greatest nation to have existed under the face of the sun since the Ottoman Empire, have a dream, an American dream. And this dream summarizes what they are America has never been on anybody's side. I think I would summarize it by saying America has always been on its side. It is always pro its interest. Now, this is what Africa and Africans have not developed. Yes, that you see, to the enemy, Africa is one country. They don't look at you as various nations, each with individual interests. They look at you as one country, and even in their approach, they approach you as one country.
True.
So, had Africans developed this consciousness, I think would be very far ahead. Now, what are my general sort of concerns regarding the BRICS? You see, I think there's a honorable, I think now he was in the previous parliament. It was called Honorable Joshua Anwarach, I think of Padiere County, that quoted J.F. Kennedy. That you see, if geography has made us neighbors, history has made us friends, economics has made us partners, why shouldn't politics make us allies? So what you see, these geopolitical blocks, is basically the top leadership in the different countries coming together to leverage against economies of scale that these blocks bring for trade, for investment, for industry, for health, and for infrastructure, basically. So you have very many of them. There's a multiplicity of them. You have the NATO, you have the ASEAN, Association of Southeast Asian Nations. There is OECD, Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development. OPEC, for the petroleum exporting countries. The Arab League, as we know it. So these regional, these geopolitical blocks have been here since time immemorial. So the BRICS is just one of them, bringing together what we call emerging superpowers. Fast-growing economies coming together with an intention to dominate the global economy by 2050. So you have the founding members being the BRIC, and then the ACE, the South Africa, being onboarded later on, and now with very many other countries asking or lobbying for invitation, because you see, to join the bloc, you're invited by an already existing member. Now, my concerns are, and if you look at the Western media, it has portrayed South Africa as the underdog of this bloc. So, and their question has been that what is the need for South Africa? Surely, isn't this just posturing, wanting to bring about diversity? Because you'll see the bloc itself has those that are not democratic in terms of how they run their politics, the Russia and China.
Yeah.
But they also bring on the vanguards of democracy. You see India and now South Africa. So and Brazil has had a fairly surviving and thriving democracy. So you're trying to bring on board this diversity, not just in the systems, the political systems that these countries subscribe to, but also bringing on the African continent, bringing on the Europe, the Asia. So I think opening up to them is sort of strategic, from a strategic point of view, to the benefit of the bloc. So when you look at the countries in this regional bloc, you see that combined they have a total GDP of 57 trillion US dollars, which makes roughly 32% of the world's global total GDP, which is one that they can use to counter dominance of the dollar and the US. So I think to bring on board South Africa is strategic. The only challenge I have is, and I've said, Africa does not have strategic interests that are agreed upon by all actors. And resultant of that, they even have no strategic center of gravity. Mzee has always been talking about what is Africa's strategic center of gravity. That if things went south, what center of gravity do African countries have to fall back on? This is very important. So it is why you see South Africa will join the bloc just to achieve self-interest. And now the rest of the Africa, I've had Egypt and Algeria and Nigeria have expressed interest to join because they are all just chipping in for their own interest. But you see, where is Africa in the grand scheme of all of this? To me, that's what I hold so dear. So the BRICS has come with initiatives. They have the New Development Bank that is meant actually with equal shareholding.
Sure.
Yeah, each of the 5 countries, I think, have shareholding of 20% as a means to smoothen the landscape over which they sort of agree and coalesce. And this New Development Bank is meant to fund infrastructure projects in the member states. They have the contingency reserve arrangement. This is meant to be a fallback for member states of this bloc. You see, because most of these blocks are usually choke-held by the big cuts, IMF and World Bank. Whenever there is a crisis and you have global liquidity pressures all over. So because you're short of liquidity in your countries, that is how IMF and World Bank come in to give you money. But behind the money are their own interests and very many other strings attached.
That's why I said, you see, when these blocks come into Africa, they all have interests. Interests that are not shared to us as Africans. But at the end of the day, can we define probably what we want?
What we want.
And in most cases, if you look at the African continent, those that are willing to join such blocks, they're looking at funds. Some are looking at political alignment. Look at countries that are expressing interest. One, if it is not money, they are looking at probably getting support from Russia in case of anything in their countries. So, considering probably the purpose of those blocks, you see self-interest as a core of membership.
True.
For South Africa to join, it has interests. For Russia may not have economic interest. I can tell you Russia or China may not have economic interest in African countries joining the bloc. Because for them, at least they are trying at least to make sure that their economies are okay. We have been benefiting as countries. In those countries, we've been benefiting from their money actually. What new thing will we benefit if at all we join such blocks? I can tell you that it will be a block as other blocks have been existing.
Sure.
There's nothing that will add. Yes.
So
Yeah,
I think as I conclude, thank you very much, comrade. If you look at the New Development Bank, you look at the contingency reserve arrangement, they're also trying to bring up a BRICS payment system to counter the SWIFT.
Sure.
You know the West and the US, whenever they are not in agreement with you, and this happened to Russia, they make sure they switch you or get you off the SWIFT international payment system. Now, for those that don't know SWIFT is a platform over which settlement of international transactions takes place. So the member countries are trying to come up with a payment system to counter the SWIFT of the US and the Western hegemony. So you find that they also have a cable, they call it BRICS cable. They want to build submarine or optic fiber cable to ease information sharing amongst member countries And they're also looking at potential currency union. They want to have a common currency. You see, because with a common currency comes ease of doing business, but also it lowers the transaction costs amongst member countries. There's something they called I forget the name. They have very many initiatives. There's one of information sharing in terms of what we all know as the indicators of economic growth. That how do we, on a peer-to-peer basis, share information and benchmark on one another. So these are the advantages that come with coalescing in regional blocks. So I would like to say, I think my part in short on this, that all this is being done in an effort to counter the dominance of the dollar. How the dollar came to dominate actually can be a show on its own. Because the movement of the dollar and the US from the gold standard system now to the petrodollar system that has faced severe challenges because of Saudi Arabia and its position on human rights. I think you remember Jamal Khashoggi, how he was killed by the crown prince of Saudi Arabia, and US allegedly killed allegedly killed by the crown prince of Saudi Arabia. And you find that Trump then and the US, that are the vanguards of human rights protection, were very tight-lipped on it because of the petrodollar system, the agreement that they have with Saudi Arabia. So all this is meant to counter the dominance of the dollar. You see, because, and you comrades will agree with me that, you see, the value of a currency is as good as how much it's demanded. Yes, so it's a very long story, but Saudi Arabia and US brokered a deal where Saudi would sell all its oil to whoever wanted to buy it using dollars. So if you're Saudi and you brokered a deal with the US, and the three of us come and want to buy oil from you, we must get the dollar to buy the oil from you. So the demand of the US dollar goes up, and so does its value. So these economies are engaging into blocks here and there to try and de-dollarize their economies. And Wall Street sort of journalists have predicted the end of the US currency and its global dominance if what is taking place is not managed decisively. So I'm sure the US is using its very clever men, the Henry Kissingers, I'm sure, are sitting in the White House and are scratching heads over whether to maintain the petrodollar system or to go back to the gold reserve system. But I think it's all in the good. If only Africa had a strategic center of gravity and common strategic interests, I think we would reap more from these global economic blocks. Because, as I conclude, as listening to Museveni quote Mao Zedong, that you see to hit two arms in different directions at the same time is bad fighting. I would rather you fold your arms, concentrate your blow, and hit your target. You see, because there are very many regional blocks. So if you're seen to be everywhere and everywhere all the time, then you're bound to be nowhere in the short to long term, medium term. So if only Africans concentrated on the free continental trade area, it's an initiative being midwifed by these African countries. If only they settled just around that. How do we increase intra-African trade and then enter these blocks after we have increased trade amongst ourselves first? Yes, to me that would be my humble take.
Thank you very much for that insightful, deliberation, Comrade Ivan. Over to you, Comrade Joshua Mujuni. He talks about the African interests and the fact that we need to define a center of gravity. Do you think Africa is at least trying? Because we have had first of all, it's not just economical. We are seeing a new awakening, sort of a new sort of push against neocolonialism. We had the generation that fought, independence. Then we had Africa dominated by, totally the West in terms of coups, in terms of who was president. Until right now, we are seeing now a wave in the Sahel. Well, it destabilizes Africa. Do you think it is at least trying? Because, we have set up our own bodies. We have SADC, we have ESC. If you follow, you know that we have COMESA Business Council, African Union with Africa Business Council, ECOWAS. Outside the bodies, we have seen some collaboration. I think 2 years ago, we saw Ivory Coast and Ghana coming together to increase the price of cocoa. We see Ruto, Sometimes I feel like we don't give ourselves validity towards what we can. And then and on the political side, we have also seen a wave of benevolent, I don't know if to call them liberators, but we have seen a benevolent wave of young African leaders taking on the Sankara type of demeanor in the Sahel. Well, it disorganizes things, but sometimes it takes a storm for there to be a calm.
Sure.
So do you think Africa, in its own capacity, is at least trying?
Thank you, Okot. Now, my comrades and I are agreeing on a certain point. Africa needs a bargaining strategy. No more, no less. We need to bargain well. We need to have strategic plans. We need to have a center of gravity, which in my view, I think we are still failing. We are talking about all these blocks in Africa. Lately, Niger falls and COMESA comes up and itself starts fighting. It's a block that says, no, we cannot have a coup. And then a few of its members say, no, it is okay because this coup is liberating. Now, we do not know whether the liberator or the liberated, we don't know who falls on the side of the block, and we do not know who falls on the side of because I think it is Algeria and and Mali that said, no, we are not going with COMESA. Now, if we have a block that ECOWAS, sorry. If we have a block that cannot control its own members, so how does it then bargain with the outside? Like my comrade says, if Africa cannot stand, if the wave goes to east, we go to east. If it goes to west, we go to west. If it comes down here, we spread apart. Now that does not make sense. It really does not make sense. We need, like my brother said, we need to strengthen our own blocks here. And these blocks cannot be strengthened if we cannot have a strategic system that runs Africa, where we have the North doing their own things. We literally don't know what is happening there. Then before you know it, there is the Central here that seems to be everywhere. Now there is the West that seems to be fighting each and every one. So if we cannot, as Africa, first combine, because looking at Africa as a one country, like my brother said, would be the best. If only Africans could look at themselves as that. If I can look at a Kenyan where the president is saying, if you come into Kenya, no worries, don't come with a visa. For as long as we have a national ID and we can identify as Ugandan.
Do you think Kenya is a country to look up to? Because we see Kenya earlier this year hosting investors from all over the world. Kenya is a country that has avoided this drama of liberation and liberators, which to some point is now becoming the problem. Because you see people liberating Niger, they're waving Indian flags. They're waving Russian flags. Kenya has largely avoided some of these things. They are focusing on their own infrastructure, stability. And earlier this year, I witnessed a meeting where investors came to Kenya. And they don't talk about history, what. They just, is the country stable? How do the numbers look? How are the trading numbers? And American investors put $1 billion in Kenya. So do you think, that Kenyan approach, of course we have our issues, and we saw Ruto in France, but it's not something that has to obsess us, that we are, we need liberation from France, then you're going to Russia.
Well, we can say Kenya is a country to look up to, but still it gets back to what we are saying.
Sure.
It gets back to what we are talking about South Africa. How does it enter BRICS? It gets about to Africa as a continent. Can we fight as brothers? Kenya could be doing well, yes, in some certain aspects. But as I wanted to say that Kenya tells you, if you're coming from Uganda, no, it's okay. Your visa it's fine. But now, after it goes back on the table and says, milk from Uganda, 0. So now, even if you opened up all these borders, but you do not sort the economics of Africa, even if I could drive a car from here to Egypt, from Egypt to South Africa, for as long as the economics are closed, then it does not help.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, comrades. And that brings us to the end of this first segment. We, however, are continuing with the show. Stick with us. In the second segment, we shall be discussing issues closer to home, issues on ground around the politics of the country, the 2026 landscape, and if the youth are, set to benefit from how the governance of this country is moving ahead. Stick with me, Okot, Olaa, and with us on the Youth Roundtable. We'll be back shortly.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media, or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Welcome back to another segment, a second segment today, here on the Youth Roundtable. With me, my capable comrades, Comrade Joshua, and Comrade Isaac, deliberating different issues. In the first segment, we had delved into a deep discussion on BRICS, economic bloc, in the light of the summit that has been happening in South Africa. And right now, we want to get back home a little bit, to zoom in back to Uganda and to try and understand what is going on in the political arena in general, in the light of the release of the roadmap, but also moving towards 2026, where we will elect leaders to run and govern Uganda for yet another 5 years, till 2031. And I would just like to go straight to you, Comrade Isaac, on this matter. The roadmap is out, but are we ready for another election? We saw what happened, in 2021, actually 2020, the killings and all these issues. We have seen the by-elections in Bukedea, all these problems happening. And of course, at the heart of all this are the youth. I'm sure if you count people who are killed, people who are abducted, people involved in who are abducting, people who are killing, people who are rigging. It's always the young people. As young people who are used by, these older people to push their agendas. Do you think we are ready yet to move? Have we learned any lessons from the past, and are we ready to move to the next election?
Democratic countries have tried so much to influence us into having democratic processes
Sure.
that have probably caused somehow more harm than good to us.
Please.
Sometimes elections do not matter. For all of us who participated actually in the last elections, it is good that the background you've given highlights a lot of mess that happened. The killings, the uncertainty, the arrests. That even up to now, we still have young people in prisons because of that election. We still have, actually as a country, we are still facing effects of that election.
But do you think the solution is not to have elections?
For now, I can tell you as a country, if at all a lot is not organized, if at all some electoral processes, some electoral reforms are brought into action, believe me or not, I don't think we need elections.
So how will we legitimize our leadership?
Legitimizing is that's why I started by saying democratic countries are trying so much to influence us into such democracies that probably are not helping us for now. We are looking at me as a common Ugandan. I'm looking at a situation whereby when I go to an hospital, I'll get good services. If I go into education, I will have good facilities. If I'm looking at transport, let's have good infrastructure. Question comes, when we go into these elections, is there anything that is changing? I must say that at least, even though there is something that is changing, as young people, there is a lot that we need actually to change, such that we move our country. I will talk as an entrepreneur.
Sure.
Doing business in Uganda for now, I can tell you, is a very big hassle. With the rankings of Ugandans creating so many businesses,
entrepreneurial,
still we are ranked high as a country with businesses which do not even celebrate their first birthday.
That's true.
What made other economies grow? Consider China. Their businesses.
True.
If we are to consider an example of how China developed, in Uganda we are doing so much bad.
Yes, bad.
So many businesses are growing. So many businesses are failing. Why is it that? I must assure you that the leadership knows what is killing our businesses. Their taxes. Start up a small business, you pay license. If you want to formalize such that you benefit from the government contracts, you need to pay revenue, and it's a starting business. How can you then compete with those companies that have even a lot of money that come into our markets for us to do business? Personally, I think why we should have elections. We normally need the participants to implement what they are promising us. That's why if I'm to reflect onto whatever that has been promised, I see a lot has not been done. As a younger person who is interested in making sure that there is change always in our countries, because economies are growing, why shouldn't we move up to that pace? If democracy does not bring results, then I completely believe we don't need democracy. I'm using an example. I'm not saying that we should do the Niger way, but if the citizens of Niger see it that that uprising will cause a change into their systems, then so be it. I don't think as a country for now wasting a lot of money to go into elections. Let even that money be used to do more developmental things. I would appreciate the efforts of the current government to make sure that our financial standards improve through introducing the different initiatives, the PDM. But when you look at what is failing all those initiatives, is politics. Because an initiative is actually more economical. But when you look at it, it's more political than economical. In other words, an initiative will fail. It aims at bringing into money in our pockets. But when you look at it, it's a mobilization thing for a certain political grouping. So as a Ugandan, as a young person who is interested in getting services, for now, I don't see elections as a tool probably to bring such services closer to me.
And comrade, I'll get back to you right there, because when you say something like that, then you owe the viewers a way forward, and we'll get there. But what about you, Comrade Ivan? Do you agree with him?
Sure. Yes, I concur with his concerns and his submission. Except for that, see, if you read a book called Dictator's Handbook, you see the author tells you that, and I see this happening already.
Sure.
You see that when in a political landscape, a politician stratifies the landscape largely into three. One, you'll have the essentials, the coercive organs of the state, the central bank, the national broadcaster, the national airliner. Then you'll have the influentials. That hasn't been
very essential, but okay,
very essential. Because the appointments there come from the man himself. Then you'll have the influentials. And at the bottom of the barrel, you'll have the interchangeables. That is the nominal electorate. All Ugandans, adults of voting age, comprise that. So, the powers that be have stratified the political landscape largely into these three. Now, in the lead up to the 2026 election, what are my expectations? I expect to see more crossovers into the NRM. Usually they wait for when there's a very important discussion, and to hoodwink you, they unveil a big fish they've caught from the opposition. I expect more of those as the political temperatures rise. I expect more constituencies to be created. You see, the cost of political administration with every election, I think, skyrockets up by more than 50%. I think in the recent roadmap that EC released, they had really provisioned. They really put a provision in that roadmap for creation of more constituencies and the financial implications therein. The politics of succession. The Muhozi Kainerugaba talk is bound to continue. I want to succeed my father. It is my patriotic duty to do so. So I expect and you talked about the Okedea issue. That was all politics around succession. How the Speaker of Parliament says the Parliament is behind you. You have over 300 MPs with 2 speakers, both the main and the deputy, simply endorsing an army general still serving as a contender in the coming election. Electoral reforms. I think for all the elections we've had, I think since 2001, we've had petitions, and out of those petitions, I've had courts give recommendations in form of electoral reforms of how we can better the subsequent general elections. Those have been shelved, and they are in the shelves gathering dust. I don't think those are about to be put into force. You see, the way these revolutionaries cannot reform themselves out of power. Yeah, they can't give it to you on a silver platter by allowing the terrain to be fair for all to play. I expect delayed provision of funding to the EC. Their budget has grown very big. And usually it's a tactic to delay the vote of money to them to organize these elections prior, to have them smooth, to have them fair. So usually this funding is brought to them towards the election, and they have to stampede into looking how to fast track the activities on the roadmap very, very fast. It hampers the ultimate outcome of the election itself. I expect a heavy deployment of LDUs. You see, this is statecraft.
Yeah.
What I know in the coming years, in the lead up to the election, we shall have crime, waves of crime. Waves of crime, beat Vijambia, all these assailants, the border gunmen. And consequent to that, you'll have a deployment of LDUs, and you'll see them, they will be on the streets. That I expect, because it's usually the normal script. Now, I expect tribal and religious undertones. See, this is largely an ethnically divided society, not only divided along tribal lines, but when religion comes, it even makes the cocktail better and more sour. So, with tribes, parochial Uganda has its ensonga semasonga, and they always chipping in those whenever people are contending for political office. They would want what to me I consider the iniquitous Maryland system, and what they call a reafe, and they would want a federal system. I expect all that politics to come back. Land grabbing is going to increase outrightly so. And you see, because the media knows Ugandans are gullible, they will take them for that ride. They usually do. So you will not have a topic or an aspect lasting more than a week. You see, all that is meant to keep you forget what happened last week. This week you're dealing with a totally different issue. Next week you're dealing with a totally different issue. So you find it is so hard for you to keep track.
Will demand an apology from you.
to keep track. No, because this is the truth. This is the truth for me. I speak from a very comfortable position. Me, I'm part of a splinter group. Yeah, within the NIM. So I think I'm comfortable with saying the truth. So so you will expect to have a block vote largely in Uganda and Busoga. I don't think that is yet to change. Then NRM will have to work so hard to reclaim those positions. But I see them holding or tightening their grip on the north, their newly found friends, the West Nile and the Karamoja sub-region, as the case has been, and also with the Rwenzururu, the down people in Kasese that have traditionally for long been opposition. I expect them to tighten their grip. With Uganda and Busoga sub-regions, I doubt. I highly doubt. So, tribal and religious undertones will highlight the elections in the lead up to 2026. I expect to see reshuffles of commissioners, electoral commission. These are my predictions. You see, politics is a science. And by virtue of it being a science means, to an extent, it's very predictable. The players change, but the script doesn't. So I expect seeing a reshuffle of commissioners of the EC. There's going to be a shrinking space for our friends in civil society. It will be a very huge crackdown. FIA will be on their necks, monitoring their accounts to see who is receiving huge monies, allegedly to fund opposition. So their space is bound to shrink. I think DGF packed its bags, and DGF was supporting very many of these NGOs. The Chapter 4s, I think even Greece, Mr. Godbert Mushabe. So I expect the civil society space to shrink.
That said, and yeah, it's very interesting to see your prophetic words of science, arts and science, and arts in politics and art and the science. Yeah, likewise military. But that said, we have had these dynamics, in the previous elections, and Uganda somehow, goes on with life. Not just Uganda, in Kenya, we saw a lot of issues in the last election, but Ruto seems to be getting along quite well and to some extent performing.
And we still have the Mandamanoi.
And we still have the people.
The
so that said, is that, just maybe the politics of Uganda that we have to get used to, or do we have to look up to something better?
No, ideally, you see, the challenge comes in with state building, nation building. The founding fathers of this country failed on that because theirs was to build political traction along religion, along tribe. So Uganda does not see themselves as a republic. Uganda is not, quote unquote, a nation state.
Can you give like a comparative of...
Now, what I would call a nation republic is Kenya. But you see, ethnically diverse as they are, they have interests that they hold dear to them as a people. That you see, what what was done in the Kalenjin Valley, the Ruto and his friend Kenyatta. But you see, after all that, you come, shake hands, and the country moves on. That's not the case here. Here it's so, again, it's so, and in the grand scheme of things, what you would consider as the interests of the republic. Because you see, for what reason would the late Apollon Sibambi, a professor in political science, be when he was still a prime minister, and even in the CA earlier on, asking for restoration of the federal system of governance? You see, because you're striving to build a republic, and here you are having small sub-states under the grander state that commands the organs of violence, wanting to also form autonomy of themselves, control resources in such a small country. So it just shows you that we've not grown that spirit of being a republic, which is totally different with our Kenyan counterparts, and even in Tanzania. Tanzania, when it was still Tanganyika and Zanzibar actually wanted to secede, to be a country on its own. So Mwalimu had to butcher some people to bring Zanzibar over, to make it Tanzania. So because he knew if he didn't do it in the early days of Tanzania having gained independence, it will not be possible later on. So that's why you will see even the leadership of the Chama cha Mapinduzi is rotational. That you'll have, for example, Al Hassan Mwinyi from Zanzibar, and then the next time you'll have a person from mainland Tanzania. So like that, they keep on rotating. And now with Samia Suluhu in, the next person we expect in Tanzania is a person from
mainland,
from Zanzibar.
She's from Zanzibar.
She's from Zanzibar. Yeah. Anyway, she just took
actually,
on because
she was Magufuli was from mainland. She was from Zanzibar. Yes.
So I think it was almost succession planning of sorts. Yeah, but God had his own plan. But we still expect. I think there's a son of Mwinyi. He's called Hussein.
Yes.
Hussein Mwinyi. I think he's being fronted to come. So they've kept it that way, and it is sort of predetermined, which is not the case here. yeah, it's very, very different. I think I've given you the comparison.
True. Yeah. All right, and over to you, Comrade Joshua. On the same matters, right before we get into way forward, or how we can get out of these predicaments that we are sort of elucidating here, what do you think about the political landscape in 2026 in the light of the release of the election roadmap? Are we ready?
Well, as for the question of if the nation is ready, it's a question Uganda has never answered, because I think since around 2006, I'm starting from 2006 because I really want to assume that we had jumped over, is that we do not know who and when comes in. Now, we have from 2021 up to date, we have cases still in court. We do not know if someone is supposed to be where they are, or I am supposed to be somewhere but I'm not there. And the bickering never stops. That is number one. Number two, when you look at now the fights going on in almost all the spheres, talk about our mighty NRM, now we have another group in the NRM, seemingly NRM, also moving in the same direction. So we do not know whether Jaja Tova Kumeini or standby generator. Now we do not know. Then before you know it, there is a group, Katonga versus Najanankumi. And talking of Katonga, I remember that KB's philosophy now seems to be working when he says we surely don't need more elections. And my brother K puts it that he would not want elections. But I think democracy is a growing process. And I personally think we need elections, ready or not ready.
We
Because
just need to keep going.
We have to get there. Slowly by slowly, we have to get there. So I think we need them. As for if the roadmap has come up very early, no, I think it is the right time. Because let's finish this and start preparing for the other. How? Because if we have had all these problems in the past, we have fights, we have killings, we have arrests, we have bribery, we have we are not educated, no sensitization. So it must be a continuous process.
Sure.
People will argue out that okay, other countries, talk about Kenya, they do not have an electoral body that is permanent. They come, organize, and go. But then you realize that our dynamics are different. Much as we are neighbors, we seemingly seem the same, but our dynamics are different. Kenya will have 2 or 3 candidates on the ballot paper. Uganda, we have 20. Now, that does not make sense. Out of the 20, we have allegedly 10 in the ruling government and 20 in the opposition. So even when what do I mean here? You have NRM with their candidate, and then you have other 3 accused of being NRM to be on the ballot paper to sabotage the other ones. Then you have those that are genuinely opposition but fighting themselves. So really, I think it is the right time because we need time. Ugandans need time to understand if we have to get anything good out of elections.
Yes.
We need time. If we are saying that we still have issues of let's say religion. Me, if I am Catholic, and then there is Robert Chagolanyi somewhere who is a Catholic, then I should side with him. But again, I have been ruled for the last 20 or so years. I'm saying 20 because I do not want to count before I was. So with an Anglican, now, has that affected my religion? Has it affected? So I think we need time to realize that, and it must be a continuous process. We do not have to break it. If we break it, then we do not. we do not now. If you break it today and then tomorrow you want to start again, you start from where you were. So I think for as long as sensitization is concerned, for as long as preparations to democracy are concerned, we need to make it a continuous process. What I do not agree with is the direct politicking of I am. That one I would not because it limits the space for development.
True.
Instead of the youth who are largely involved in the fights, instead of settling down, working, towards development, towards the economics of the nation, we are here fighting every now and then. True. And he talks about the killings. The killings cannot stop if we cannot stop this cheap politicking. Why? Because every single nation on this planet Earth, for as long as there is politics, there must be killings. I'm not saying that's the right thing to do, but it is the science of the politics. For as long as we are still running that type of politics, then the killings are going to be there. Now, the issue I have with the political system we have in Uganda is because you finish elections today,
yes,
and tomorrow the main political actors immediately start calling you and engaging you in fights. Now, that is what I do not believe in. But for as long as the roadmap is concerned, looking at sensitization of the masses, looking at preparations of if the other time we go to the polling date and then on the ballot paper there is Joshua as a picture and then Ivan as a name, how do we pull out all these mistakes and make our system clear?
Yes,
I think it is the right time for the Electoral Commission to release the roadmap. As for the bickering and the fights, I think our leaders need to sit down and realize that Uganda is not developing because they are killing a lot of time in politics. Yes. Now, when you talk about, the issue of MK and then the KDA function coming
it's a
up.
hot topic.
And you're like, MK as a person has his constitutional rights. And Ugandans must accept that MK is a first son. There is no way in any country Joshua than me can have the same rights as the first son. Beat MK, beat who? Even if it were you in that office now, the privileges would change immediately.
But the privileges are accorded to him as a first son.
Exactly.
Clear, and largely they are due to security concerns.
Perfect.
But then when it comes to, for example, breaching the code of what would be, the army.
Now does
that privilege also extend to a first son?
That's where I'm coming to. What I said, he has his privileges as a first son.
Yes.
So I would wake up in the morning and invite him on my wedding day as a first son. Yes. That is very okay.
True.
That is very okay. The issue is where I was headed is that I'm not so sure if he's the one misusing the privileges or the system is giving him the chance to misuse the privileges. Now, when it comes to bleaching the code of conduct of the army, a serving officer, a senior presidential advisor, now running around the nation. I recently saw his tweet, and his tweet was in 1981, after the elections, it's a paraphrase. Things didn't go well, and my father went to the bush to liberate this, and we share the same philosophy. So, and then he ends saying, I will be president of the nation come 2026, no matter what. Now, I retweeted and asked, so does that mean that if by any chance you appeared on the ballot paper, and you do not win, and you allege that they rigged the election, do we go back to Ruwero? Do we go back to Madera? What? Because if you say he went and you say you share the same philosophy, so what happens now? That is the politics that I do not believe in. That does the politics that does not end in Uganda. A continued fight and confusion. That is what I do not believe in. So for as long as well, I'm glad my brother here is in a faction in NRM that seems not to believe in the status quo, and by nature of politics, that puts him at a certain part of opposition, and so is Mohozi and his group. Now, why is the Electoral Commission quiet on this? Even after saying our roadmap is here, it's clear. If you want to do politics, then our starting time is here and up to, I think, the 12th of February. Now, why is the Electoral Commission quiet?
Sure.
Why is the Parliament quiet? Why is all these arms of government quiet? Is a question of, that's why I was asking, is it the system that is giving him the privileges, or he actually has the privileges? That is a question of discussion. But the speaker, having him invited on her function and then showcasing him to the parliamentarians that were present, I wouldn't want us to target on the Parliament of Uganda. No. I would want us to look at the speaker as a Ugandan who is also doing probably what is not correct. Yeah. Because the Parliament is a big faction, is a complete organ of the government with both opposition.
Do you think she's doing what she has to do to, for her political survival?
Okay, if it is about political survival, then she is, because politics is a
and probably also same applies to the members of parliament.
Okay, now because we have NRM members, he's talking about reshuffles. We have those that are eyeing Hozi as the next project, and literally, if I have to be his friend, to be on his show, to be next to him, to get a ministerial post after, then for a game of numbers, yes. For the benefit of the nation, completely wrong. Yeah. So I still think as youths we need to, and this is good for us as youths to discuss such things, so that we get to know where we should be and when we should be there.
All right.
Yes.
Yeah.
When and where.
Yes.
Such that at the end of the day, what do I gain? Okay, the politics of Uganda is okay. We have a sitting government. That is probably not doing what I expected.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, can I survive on my own? Or it is either I fight on behalf of Chagola and I get shot, or I fight on behalf of MK and I get a token.
Yeah.
So now that is where, as youths, even before we start looking at these people, we need to also do self-sensitization in ourselves.
Yeah. Thank you, comrade. And I just want to, before our time lapses, to bring in Comrade Isaac and also Comrade Ivan on basically on the way forward. But I do appreciate your elaborate deliberation. I think you cover so many issues and you bring it up very interestingly. Comrade Isaac, you've heard what our colleagues have said, but now I just, especially for our viewers, how should the youth out there approach, these upcoming elections? The roadmap is out, but the youth, many don't know how to approach. Of course, the basic instinct is that of survival. Economy is hard, and many people, because of not having ideas to follow, not knowing which people to follow, and having the kind of information, they end up following the basic thing, which is the money for tomorrow. So what advice do you have for the young people there, approaching this election?
I must say that we need to participate fully. Given the demographics, it is us now as young people who are mostly affected in the decisions that are made politically. So as young people, we need to participate. If it is to stand for those positions, please stand for any position that you see. If at all we have the numbers, I believe as young people will have a good debate and a good voice to say that let all policies be driven towards elevating the young people. So I just need to emphasize
You
that.
don't encourage Niger.
Yes, I'm not encouraging Niger.
Yeah.
Though sometimes if change needs to be brought in that way, even the government that is here, that is how they took power. If they used that motive to take power, so be it. In case change is to be probably created.
True.
Personally, I don't have any problem with MK vying for presidency. It is his choice, and anyone who supports him, you see, politics is all about opportunity. You present yourself to probably the person you think has the same mindset, or will do what the future holds. So if people support MK, let the numbers win in 2026. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And over to you, Comrade Ivan. Just before we go to conclusive remarks, what advice do you have to a young Ugandan out there? You've given your predictions, but we are young people and many people don't know how to approach these elections. Do they go for principled parties, which in the past have not seemed to gather numbers? We saw the Farmers' Party with its ideology. We saw NT, but they don't seem to gather the numbers and the muscle to be able to push through. Or do they just, proceed with the money? Is there a hope? Is it futile? What advice do you have for a confused young Ugandan man or woman sitting out there?
Sure. Thank you very much, Sam.
Yes.
See, for me, I think that, as quoted in an English adage, that see, every war produces its own generals. You see, the founding fathers of this country had ideals they were fighting for. Yeah, that get the colonial Muzungu out and have the African reclaim their destiny, which I think they did so. What they didn't know is what to do after the Muzungu had gone away. So then came the dictators in the 70s that thought the founding fathers had not done it right. So that is the war they fought, and it's that war that made them generals. So that's how you see very many coups. If you read a book by Kwame Nkrumah called Class Struggles in Africa, he highlights the cause of most of those coups on the continent, but he even brings in the class struggle perspective. But that's the side of the issue. Yes. Then came the liberators that thought the coup militants had destabilized the timetable, not only of Uganda as a country, but the timetable of East African integration. Remember, EAC was a very strong community before Amin came here. We had all these East African post and telecommunication. We had everything here. But because of Amin and his coming, he destabilized the timetable integration. So then we have the liberators coming to do away with the coup militants. And that was their war, and it made them the generals that we see today. So the issue is, see, what is your war? What is your generational cause, you as a young person out there? To me, I think the challenge that we're having with politics is because we want to try to resolve an already resolved question. The political question in this country was resolved
Mm.
with the sharing of the NRM. So what we have is simply the West trying to project its values that bring back multipartyism, have people different shades of opinion express themselves, trying to resolve an already resolved question. Yes, to me, it's what I think. So you as a young person, what is your generational cause? Yours is unemployment. People, please do not tell me politics when I do not have money in my pocket. Or do not hoodwink me with 5,000 shillings to vote you to be in parliament, to take a ministerial position for the next 5 years. When I have no money in my pocket, I have no food on my table. How do I deal with unemployment? Sorry. So that should be our center of concentration. Otherwise, we try to resolve already resolved questions. To me, I think we are shooting ourselves in the foot. Like Lenin says, it's moving 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Most of these opposition political parties, if you to examine them, their ideological dispositions on very many of the issues that are taking the world by storm, you find they'll have none. Theirs is, we were part of the movement, we disagreed with the establishment, and out of intrigue, we move out and form another party. So this party, not focused on ideals, but focused on a personality.
Reaction.
Very reactionary. You see, and when you focus on a personality, it's very tiring. You even run out of ideas. You run out of ideas to keep feeding your electorate on. So that come the next election, they're able to cast the ballot in your favor. So you find that it is Museveni and Muhoozi, or largely the NRM, that are setting a national agenda. For example, it had to take from Museveni to move in what people call a popcorn machine for Kyagulanyi to come out and make a statement. So, and you know, for us in politics, we know that, you see, he who shapes the narrative takes the day. Yes, the moment I shape the narrative and you follow suit, I'm the winner. Even when to the general public, you seem to be the one making comments and throwing slander here and there. So to me, I think very reactionary in approach, very bankrupt in ideology. So it is why, even when we, as Renewed Uganda, with General Tumukunde, disagreed with the establishment on certain issues, we opted to remain within, a splinter group within. And I'll reiterate what General was saying as I conclude, that you see, sometimes you find that the differences between a particular school of thought are usually more spot on and more acute than differences between different schools of thought. You'll find Marxist leftists and Marxist rightists within the same school feuding more than Marxists and say the other group, the capitalists. So you have center left, extreme left, center right, extreme right. So you become a force to reckon with when you disagree, but from within. But when you opt to move out, like what happened in 2006 to the Jeko, then you dealt with. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you very much, our dear viewers, for sticking with us through this very interesting conversation. My very capable panel as usual. Thank you, Comrade Ivan, Comrade Joshua, and Comrade Isaac, for your views. I think they were very deliberative. I also learned a lot. And I'm sure our dear viewers out there also learned so much. Let us continue working together to disseminate these kinds of information and conversations, especially for the youth out there, for the betterment of Uganda. We all have hopes for a great Uganda nation someday. And it all starts with these small activities that we do. Thanks for sticking with us every week. And keep following Civic Space TV, the Youth Roundtable. Retweet and share this much needed information. It was a pleasure hosting you today. I remain Okot, your host. Thank you.